comparison to what Clubhouse already has in place.
Right.
Like it's a smooth looking app, but like trying to bring all my friends list in and all that jazz, or even like have a decent bio. None of that stuff is really fleshed out yet on the Spotify. What is the name of the service? I'm gonna look it up right here because I know I got the app somewhere.
Yeah, and by the
Green
way,
Room. Green Room. That's what it is.
we are live. By the way, they see us, Chris, and I like to kick in the show kind of like casually anyway. But hey, everybody, welcome to another wonderful Saturday morning. Yeah, it's early. It's early as always on the West Coast, but it's Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast, and it's very much a morning show. I have my coffee. And I'm really excited about today. We have our first guest since we took a day. You know, we were on a big guest streak, and we took down 1 week where I just focused on E3, which we're gonna recap a little bit today. But I have Chris down below here. What's up, Chris? And I don't want to.
That's me.
That's you. And I don't want to butcher your last name. Is it Darbro? Is that how we say
Yeah.
it? Darbro.
Literally just like as simple as it looks.
Like Hasbro, but Darbro without the has.
That's the first time I've ever heard someone use that reference as a way to say it. And that actually works really well.
You like that? All right, cool. I mean,
I dig it.
You know, mixing in a little bit of the nerdy things. You know, that's something I haven't talked about on the show is toys. I got to do an episode about toys. But Chris, thank you so much for joining. Today's episode is going to be really interesting. Not only are we going to talk about the old job you had with Loot Crate, which is something I always wanted to talk about and something that was kind of important to the nerddom culture. I forgot when it came out, Chris. When did Loot Crate come out officially? Like what year around?
Company was founded July of 2012.
So it was, yeah. So like 2012, those early
9 years ago, man, that flew by.
Yeah, but there was that time where Comic-Con, you thought Loot Crate was synonymous with like Comic-Con and all the cons and like getting like exclusive crates and signing up for subscriptions, which we're going to dig into. But Chris,
yeah, totally.
Before we get into all that, I like to kind of hit my guests with just a little bit of personal, you know, connection. And I just want to learn a little bit about you personally, where you're from, and also what's your connection to video games? Like when it comes to video games, was it something in your childhood that connected you? So love to hear where you grew up, a little bit about you, and then give us a little bit of backstory on your video game history and why you love video games.
All right. So I was a little bit all over the place, like a little bit of military brat. So I was actually born here in LA. My dad got stationed in Virginia. He was in the Air Force, so I lived in Virginia for a long time on the East Coast, and then we moved to Utah. And then after like high school, I came out to California a few times. I moved back and forth a little bit, and then in 2006, decided to come out for good to California and LA and do the LA thing. And as far as video games go, that's just been you know, my first console was an NES, but I had played like that actually like was owned in the house. But I had played everything else before that. You know, I had the Atari 2600 and a Coleco Atom and all kinds of crazy nonsense. My grandparents were one of the few people I knew who actually had computers because they were so expensive. And you know, I'd play little games on there, like stuff like Lord, like just text adventures, things like that. And I just took to gaming at a young age. I was very in depth on all of my like passions about gaming. Like I ended up becoming the kid at school where like you came to me if you wanted to know about like Japanese imports and things like that, because that's the stuff like I would, you know, pulling stuff from the back of magazines and these little bits of info I could pull from everywhere. Like I wanted to know, like, you know, not just what was the big thing that was being advertised at the time, but all the stuff that I didn't have. Like that's, you know, as a kid, how I learned that, like, for example, other countries have different frame weights than we do. And some stuff's at 30 frames versus 25 in Europe, et cetera, et cetera. You know, learning how imports work in other countries and how the region locking, when that came to be, that kind of stuff. Like that was all just part of these chunks of gaming that I nerded the hell out on. So
nice. So what's the first console for you? Was it the Atari 2600? Was that kind of like your generation?
No, I mean, I had access when I had played one a lot before then, but the first one we actually like had in the house that we owned was the NES. Yeah.
Man, the NES is, the reason I was bringing up the 2600 is because I actually personally,
I
got,
saw that.
yeah, I found someone. I really wanted to buy the 2600 in person, but I was just having trouble finding a really good copy of it. And I found I took my time on eBay and I found someone that was offering a really good, I guess, bundle for the Atari 2600 with all these games. It was in great shape. I even got the AV connector. I got 4 of the paddle controllers. Believe it or not, I only have 1 of the regular controllers, but had to kind of show it off. Nothing better than the wooden accents as well, and um,
Yeah.
it really feels good to have this back in like my personal collection. So I did want to share that while you had mentioned the 2600. But listen, the NES was for a lot of people, as kids, early kids of the 80s, the NES is really synonymous with like the start of the video game generation. Obviously, Atari 2600 they say did kind of start the home console generation. I think there was the Odyssey too, but there was that market crash with the game ET here, which I
Yeah.
was given. Someone said, "Oh, what a cool bundle," except for the ET, and I was like, "Nah, it's cool that I got ET again. Like, I don't care.
Like
Like I'm happy I got
the
it."
cool factor in that is like, okay, it everybody knows it was a terrible game, and if you plug it in, like it's one of those things like you'll get bored after 5 to 10 minutes. But it's great to have in your collection for the storytelling
I
behind it
know.
because there's so much of that. It's just like immediate cool factor. Like, why would you not want that in your collection if you have access to one, especially one that's apparently a clean one and maybe wasn't one of the Arizona dumping ground ones,
Yeah,
because those are super rare.
those are very rare and those are worth a lot of money, believe it or not. But yeah, man, it's really cool to have this back. I'm gonna try to hook it up to my CRT TV that I have and play a little bit of Atari. It's really nice.
I'm
To
looking
have
at
it
your
back.
photo there, and like
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just because it's like on my screen it's a little blurry and pixelated, but like having a reference point now, it's weird looking at that now and like looking at the Atari paddles and thinking they kind of resemble Black Magic pocket cameras. Do you
That's
catch that at all? Like,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, totally.
I like it. They just look like they're like sitting on their back and like,
It's a good photo, huh? Took a good
yeah.
and hey, Sonic, thanks for the host and good morning. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Yeah, man. So before we get into, because I want to talk to you about Loot Crate, because that was something that I had a subscription to, and I want to get into that because I think that's a really cool topic today, and just the fact that we have someone that actually directly worked for them. But I know that you're a big E3 person. I know last week we had our E3 episode. Just quickly to recap E3, Chris, what was your takeaway from this year's E3 or the digital version of
Uh,
it?
I feel like I had a similar takeaway that a lot of people did. Like there wasn't a lot of those really like big OMG wow moments in comparison. And let me preface this in comparison to previous
We're going to a
E3s. I think
dimension.
that seemed like a consensus that was a lot of places all over social that I saw. Like everybody's like, oh, this wasn't like a really great E3. It was kind of meh. But I think contextually that's because you're comparing to these previous E3s, and like I don't think anybody should have gone into this E3 having that expectation. Like, yeah, we're starting to like come back to society and unmask and things like that, but we're still far ways out from like the logistics of big events and things like that flowing the way that they did before. And so like, yeah, I don't think anybody should have ever had an expectation that this E3 was going to be anything remotely like previous E3s. And that said, contextually, even though it wasn't like as big and crazy, I still think a lot of companies that debuted did a really great job, and there was a lot of stuff announced that I'm really excited for.
Yeah, so Elder Ring, for instance, is a good one. We got Starfield, we got Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, which I wasn't expecting them because I was watching the Nintendo Direct, and towards the end, I like was losing faith that they were going to show something, and then they actually showed this beautiful
They
footage.
totally trolled everybody with the Zelda Game and Watch.
They totally, which was
like
cool.
Everybody's like,
that was cool though.
It is cool.
I want one.
My only thing there is like I want one as well, but my only thing there is I think the price they said it was going to be was $50, and I personally feel like that's a little spicy for what it is. but
That's
I
gonna
think
be
it's a really cool product and I do want one.
I,
But a $50 price point seems a little bit high. But that's my opinion.
it's such a collector piece though that people will pay for it. Like people are gonna buy
Oh,
that
100%.
and unopen it. You know, Nintendo really understands like that people like to collect the nostalgia now, so that's why they're really hitting home on that stuff. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it'd be really cool if it was like 25 to 30 bucks, right? Would be more of a
Yeah.
realistic price point. But man,
And I will say it's also interesting that, for yeah, I guess it took 35 years or whatever it's been now. But I think this is the first time Nintendo's actually publicly like not shied away from talking about Zelda 2.
yeah.
Because prior to this, it's just like, oh, we might release it as like a virtual console thing or whatever else, but we're not giving it any marketing push. We're not talking about it because it's kind of like this thing from our history that didn't play as well as the first game or the first game for the Super Nintendo, and we went this different route with it, and it wasn't as popular. And yeah, it's just one of those things Nintendo just has really shied away from in the past. But now, this was like the first time we're like, oh yeah, we're throwing Zelda 2 Adventure Link on there. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah, and Sonic just said, and hey, nerding, what's up? Welcome to the show. And Sonic says, I feel E3 is one of those events where having the live crowd does make a difference. Don't get me wrong, a lot of great games like Metroid, Elden Ring, but yes, having no crowd I felt made a difference.
100%. And I've got a great example of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
E3 2019.
You've got the gaming chair,
sitting
the gaming
20
headset.
feet away when it happened.
Now all you need is
the Xbox presser, Cyberpunk, Keanu coming out, or the reveal of that whole thing. Keanu doing the back and forth with the crowd with the I forget the breathtaking. And like that, like just getting that energy from the crowd and going off. If you had that exact same thing happen, but did it like it was this year, where Keanu just kind of quietly comes out on the stage, like, oh, cool, he's there, but like you don't have that energy from the crowd, or the energy from the crowd when new stuff, like when he was revealed on screen as a character, or even the previous year, 2018, when they did at the end of the Xbox showcase, where I don't remember if you remember this or not, but they had they're like, all right, this is, we're wrapping this up, everything's good to go, this is the end of the Xbox presentation, hope you guys had a great time. Phil Spencer gets like halfway through the sentence, and then all of the lights in the room completely shut off. And it was like, what? It just happened. Like all the power went out. And the next thing you know, on screen, there's like red code popping all over the screens. And like, it looks like everything in the room is getting hacked. Everyone's like, what is going on? And that was like that first big cyberpunk push that if they had tried to do that without a crowd and do it the way they did this year, just would not have happened. So 100% agree with Sonic on that. Like, and hopefully next year, that we're going to have those crowds back for big events like that again, that really takes big announcements and pushes them over the edge and gets them talked about even more when you get that moment of the audience just absolutely losing it over a really rad announcement.
Yeah, and I think that this Keanu announcement is now going to live as like one of those, when you look up what are the top 10 moments in E3 history, there's no doubt that this Keanu moment has now pushed itself into that kind of style of moment.
Absolutely one of my favorite moments, and I'm literally sitting 20 feet away from him when he came out on stage.
So wait, you were actually at the so the feeling must have been amazing to see this.
Oh, absolutely, because like I'm like sitting there on the right side of what you're seeing here.
I see you over here. I could
totally
make you out. No, I'm just kidding.
But so like, yeah, I'm literally sitting 20 feet away, and like they do the reveal on the screen. So we're in the auditorium, the lights are down in the Microsoft Theater, and they're doing the reveal on screen where Johnny Silverhand comes up and tells him to wake up, whatever, the wake up samurai. And everybody's like, oh my God, Keanu's in the game, and they're losing it. And then like before they've cut to the stage, I look over to the right side of the stage and they're lighting up one of the doors and like start getting the smoke machines going. I'm like, no way. And like a guy was sitting next to me, he's like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm like, wait 3 seconds and watch this. And sure enough, they cut out and Keanu walks out and everybody loses it. Obviously, like, yeah, you can go back and watch this here, and it's the energy from the crowd. That room
No, this
erupted.
literally, the lighting, everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Look at the lighting, it was so great. They had this really
Yeah.
well done. Because you can't make him out just yet. And then when he steps out,
It's like, but the second like you saw the silhouette after seeing that reveal, everybody knew, like, oh my God, he's literally right here and coming out to talk about this.
I did see
And
this live too. Like not in
here's-
person like you, but I saw it on the
And the thing about this too is the live feed doesn't have the audience or the room audio anywhere near what it actually was sitting in that room. It erupted like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, look
like
at
I've been to
everyone's
concerts in the Microsoft Theater that like didn't have the crazy eruption of volume and cheers that did.
Yeah, dude.
I remember going back home later and like watching the VOD. I'm like, oh my God, it looks really cool on the VOD, but being there in person was so much louder, so much crazier. Everybody was absolutely losing it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I hope that when we go back to E3, I think next year you'll see it back. You know, we'll get back to these like live reveal announcements, which really give it that much more oomph and excitement instead of just showing a trailer. But that being said, Chris, look at this guy with shorter hair in this photo here.
Look at that.
That is you, and you're wearing what's called Loot Crate, which, as you mentioned a few years back, used to be a very, very kind of fun, very nerd-centric thing to have, a subscription service, I guess. Before we go into it, Chris, what was Loot Crate, and what did you do for Loot Crate? Just to give us, anyone that might not know what Loot Crate is, believe it or not, you know, what was it, how did it start, and how did you get to be a part of it?
So like I mentioned earlier, Loot Crate started in 2012, and it, this was like right as the subscription box thing was starting to take off. So you had like Bark Box for dogs and Birch Box and Conscious Box, and these different subscription boxes that were starting to pop up. A lot of them were like samples and things like that, and influencers started like, oh, I got this Birch Box and I got this in it and whatever else, and it was just a lot of like trials, free samples and stuff. And so that was really starting to take off at the time, and Loot Crate decided like, oh, we're going to do something like this but for the geek and gaming community, and we're going to basically try and do stuff that we would want to see in a box that we receive in the mail, unlike these other things. Like we want to take that, we pushed it as Comic-Con in a box was kind of one of the biggest ways we used to advertise it back in the day. So, it was getting things in there and collectibles that, we tried to put stuff in there that, sometimes would be the stuff you would wait in line at Comic-Con for, but instead of having to wait in line at a Comic-Con, you got a monthly shipment of cool geek related stuff.
That's like really just the idea of it makes sense to me as a nerd. Like, I personally have been going to cons since the 90s, right? Like I went to like Comic-Con Philadelphia in 1995 where Todd McFarlane and like Eric Larson were signing books for Spawn and Savage Dragon. Like,
nice.
And I remember like just being able to get swag back then. And then like fast forward to like the early days of E3, filling up the early days of E3, you were getting like swag galore. That was swag central. And then obviously, like you said, Comic-Con. But I thought Loot Crate was such a cool idea. And I was subscribed for, I think, at least like almost 2 years for Loot Crate, by the way. I do have somewhere. Oh, hold on. Do you remember this, Chris?
What do you got?
Remember this?
Oh, the Los Pollos Hermanos apron. Yeah, absolutely.
I was trying to find all my Loot Crate stuff, and this is the one thing that I was able to find right away. And this was really cool. And what's funny? I had a podcast, the Destiny podcast, and we were doing a few YouTube things, and I did we would do the Loot Crate reveal videos, which was a big deal too. When people would open Loot Crates on video. Oh, this is month of May's Loot Crate.
That was one of the things that like helped get us off the ground and like start exploding early on with stuff like that. We had, the different influencers that were, doing monthly unboxings and showing off the rad gear they were getting every month, which like was always because of the stuff we put in the box. And like, the thing we tried to do early on was we only put stuff in the crates that we wanted to get ourselves, like as legitimate
I'm pretty
geeks and
sure this
gamers.
was a Loot Crate, the Carnage mug.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
And so like, yeah.
This is from you,
And
man.
and like this is one of the things where like it always read so well on camera because people would do other subscription services and they go through like, oh, this is kind of cool, whatever else, but then they would get the stuff that we sent and they could see like how much we put into, like how much care we put into the curation of what was going in any given crate.
I got a bunch of stuff from you guys, like all scattered all over the place. I forgot that the Carnage mug, that's one of my favorites, by the way.
Yeah, that was a great mug.
I love this mug, and I still have it. So Loot Crate's doing really well, right? What can you give us a little background on what actually happened, and wasn't there some problems with Loot Crate from a legality point of view? What was the legality issues behind Loot Crate? Was it that it was gambling? What started to happen publicly that kind of affected the company, and how did that affect you guys working there?
I mean, I don't think there was anything like gambling related, but
Maybe not gambling.
do you want me to like go into that, or you want to like lead up more of like the history of what was going on, or even like what I was doing there? I don't know what.
Let's lead up to that, because obviously I didn't mean to jump ahead too far, but let's lead up.
Oh no, it's all good.
Let's lead up. To
So yeah, we started in 2012. The first crate shipped out to 300 people, and because the site had not been set up the correct way initially, we had some international orders. We didn't mean to do that, and so like one of our subscribers was this woman in Canada who's fantastic and like big geek community person that we all know to this very day because she's like such an evangelist for what we were doing. And then we just it started blowing up from there. Like the first month was just putting some nerdy stuff in a box and shipping it out and seeing how it was received. And then it turned into like, all right, well, this seems like let's keep doing this. Let's go down to like the toy district here in LA and see what we can find and what we can get a good deal on if we buy it in a little bit more bulk. And like the demand just kept increasing. Like early on, we didn't really have to take any investment or anything. Like everything was paying for itself, which is incredibly rare, mind you, for any startup company. Like you just don't see that, like where they just start up and the proceeds are going to keep paying for things rather than them having to take a lot of investment money and things like that to get things going and kind of build the recognition. And we started taking off 2013, 2014. We started exploding. We everybody knows a great story I like telling is that everybody knows Funko Pops. Everybody knows Funko Pops because of Loot Crate, because like Funko existed before then, but like the pop figurines weren't as big a thing. And so we started doing like a Funko Fridays thing on social where we did giveaways and we had Funko Pops that we gave away. And the more we did that, the more people were like, oh my God, these things are really rad, and started giving more attention to Funko. And we even started a lot of the early boxes. We had collectible Funko figurines, pop figures in the crates. And, as we start scaling up and say, one month we're shipping to 100,000 people worldwide, that's instantly 100,000 people who are gaining awareness of Funko Pops and wanting to get more outside of whatever our social pushes on Instagram and Facebook and everything else, where people were actually getting them in their hands. And it was one of those things where like a lot of what we were doing as we grew was actually helping Funko grow as well.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. And Genzo, we are talking about original Loot Crating, but we are going to get into a little bit on gaming subscriptions and stuff, but we are talking about general Loot Crates. Yes, the real thing. And I have this Halo thing. Keep going, Chris. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So yeah, we really started to take off, and then we were shipping to hundreds of thousands of people. We were creating new crate lines. So we did one of the first things we expanded to was gaming, like a gaming focus crate, because everything had been this mix of pop culture and gaming. You got a little bit of everything. And, we ended up seeing that we had a strong enough fan base of just gamers that didn't care as much about the pop culture stuff that we decided to do a new crate. So the very first PAX South, we launched Loot Gaming. So sat on a panel there, and we told the crowd, and it got leaked like an hour early, and everybody like went nuts. But like, yeah, we have a Loot Gaming specific crate now, so you can subscribe to that and only get gaming items, gaming t-shirts, gaming collectibles, keychains, mugs, etc., etc. And we just kept adding new crate lines and blowing up. We had Loot Anime and things like the Halo crate or the Destiny crate. Our DX crate which was like a premium, like more expensive crate with higher end items. We did our Harry Potter crate and Mine Chest, which was a Minecraft specific crate, and Lootware, which was only wearable items rather than like figurines, stuff like that. So yeah, the growth. I've never seen or been at any company in my life that grew as fast as we did, and it was kind of crazy. It almost felt like overnight, where like, we started things out and people asked like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Like, "Oh, I'm at Loot Crate and we do this thing." And what is that? And then it was like almost overnight, be like, "Oh my God, you work at Loot Crate. Oh my God, that's so amazing." Or, people in LA like, "Hey, I'm looking for a job and like Loot Crate would be the coolest place to work. Can you like put in a good word?" And everything. So much of that just like flooding my inbox. It was amazing. And I've got so many great things that I love about what came to be out of that, and so many experiences that I had that I never would have had anywhere else. So that is a time in my life that like we had lightning in a bottle, and being able to hold that bottle and be a part of it was something just I can't even go into the detail, just how to say enough to how crazy it was. I know you asked her like what I was doing. So when I came in there, it was just the two co-founders and the wife of one, basically running like purchasing and social / marketing and doing support tickets for shipping and everything else. And I'd known one of the co-founders prior to Loot Crate, and knew that he was working on that. And he was like, "Hey, like, you should come into the office and like check out what we're working on." And like, I'm always, as far as startups go, I'm like always hesitant. Like, I want someone to prove themselves before just hopping in. Like, and I've come from the startup world before that, and been burned with startups, the way they work, and how easily they can just dissolve overnight. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll keep my eye on it. Here's what I will do. I will subscribe. I want to like see what the product is. I want to support people that I know, and so I will subscribe. Not only will I do that, I will do your very first unboxing video. Like, I know I'm LA based, so I'm probably going to receive my crate before most people do. This was like the first or second, I think it was the first month that they did this. Like, I will do an unboxing. The second I get it, I will put an unboxing together, get it on YouTube ASAP, and do whatever I can to help out. And so, yeah, I was also the company's first unboxing video. And like, after a couple of them, like 2 months in, we were still shipping to like, 500 people or so. I'm like, all right, you know what? I dig what you guys are doing here. I don't feel like you guys are just someone who's just like trying to profit off of geeks and gamers, which is one of my hesitations going in. Like, I feel like you guys legitimately get the people you're selling to, and you get things that they want. Like, you understand the demographic. So I'll tell you what, I will come into the office and I will just like hang out with you guys, see how things work, and just chill. And if I feel like there's a vibe, and you guys feel there's a vibe with me, like, let's talk about making something happen. And there was, I just went in and like, I basically worked for free. I did work for free early on because I just wanted to get to know what was going on. So like, I think our third crate, I came in and just started packing one weekend. Like, I put me on the assembly line. I want to pack the stuff up. I want to see the process. I want to see what's going into the TLC that goes into this product and getting out into people's hands. And so I did that. Everything worked. And like, all right, let's talk about making this work. And my background is in security and IT and video production, the number of things. They're like, all right, well, we need someone to basically start building out our tech infrastructure because we don't have anybody doing that or handling that right now. But also, like, you have a lot of other skill sets. Like, we need someone who can handle office stuff, like making sure that the electricity and the toilets and the everything else in the office is running how it should, and ordering groceries and keeping everybody fed, etc. So like a little bit of office management. And then it was also like, oh, by the way, there's this event coming up in Florida, in Orlando, that was like a very first con that we decided to like put ourselves out to, and we have done zero preparation for this. Could you also come on and basically be the event manager and handle getting everything shipped from Florida? By the way, this is like 2 weeks from now. Nothing had been done. And like, yeah, can you figure this out in 2 weeks and like get us a booth and get everything going on down at this convention in Florida and get everybody there, get the product there, get us there. Like, all right. So yeah, I basically started out as this jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife of everything that was going on, and that was what I started doing at Loot Crate. So I was our director of technology, but also our events director manager, and a little bit of office management, some shared office management duties with another employee to make sure that everybody was fed, and eventually turned into making sure that we have security systems and that's taken care of and being handled correctly, and cloud services for our infrastructure and what we were doing, etc. And like that's basically what I started doing, and was doing that as we were exploding into the behemoth that we were up through 2015, 2016, when things started to dip a little bit.
Why did they start to dip? What was the decline of, because it to me, as someone outside of, obviously you were connected directly with Loot Crate, but for me as a fan and someone that was subscribed, obviously I stopped subscribing at a certain point. But what was the downfall and the decline of it? Like, what happened exactly? Was it disinterest from the public? What was starting to happen?
I mean, there was disinterest from the public that we were creating that we didn't need to be, which is part of the problem. Any company growing that fast is bound to have trouble, and that's kind of what we ran into, like, projecting how much product was needed to be able to have enough product to ship out to enough subscribers was one hurdle that was hard to face at the rate we were growing. There's some specifics that I'm very hesitant to go into, and I don't want to bash anybody or anything like that.
No. I don't want you to bash it. Just a general perspective would be fine.
But yeah, I'm trying to think the best way to put that. But there was a lot more hiring being done than needed to be, and a lot of scenarios created where there were too many cooks in the kitchen than needed to be. Cooks in the kitchen that didn't necessarily have the skill sets or needed to be there, especially when we had this established, well-running machine. Like, when part of what made Loot Crate work early on, we were like going crazy and everything was going awesome, was that the CEO, for example, had trust in us to, as geeks and gamers, because he wasn't really a geek or gamer himself, but he had the trust in us to curate these products and to make sure that we were keeping everything to a certain standard, and that we were doing, he entrusted us to do things a certain way. And there was a point where we started getting some of that autonomy and stuff taken away in exchange for bringing other people into the company that were from other companies, things like that, because they thought like, all right, well, we're gonna take how fast we're growing, and like we're growing this fast, and that's crazy enough, and anyone else probably say like, yeah, let's make sure that we keep that working the way it should. But instead it was, all right, well, now we've got dollar signs in our eyes. Let's see how crazy we can push this and grow even faster and get crazier. Let's launch six or seven crate lines and just batch hire people left and right, and we'll just assume that they can do this as well as you guys have been doing it for these last few years. Yeah, and that kind of thinking and mentality led to a lot of stuff slipping through cracks. So, people weren't receiving their crates as fast as they would have liked. There were a lot of QA issues. They get products showing up damaged more often than not, or the curation just went downhill. When it was early on, like I said, it was a group of guys that were legitimate geeks and gamers that did not want anything in a crate that they wouldn't want to receive themselves as geeks and gamers. And that process worked really well. And when you take that out of the process and just assume like you can just throw any IP in a box and do something fun with it, geeks and gamers are excuse my language, geeks and gamers are the best at sniffing out bullshit. And that's 100% what happened. And that happened with because we had a lot of competitors too.
It's
so
like
we had
an authenticity kind of thing, like
100%,
yeah,
110%. We had competitors too. There was a company called Nerd Block that was like the second most popular. God, who else was there? One Up Box, Super Geek Box, Geek Fuel, quite a few that were all trying to do exactly what they saw our success. They want to do the same thing. And they all crashed for the same, like some of them are still kind of trickling along, but like, for example, Nerd Block, one of the biggest things that killed them off is like that authenticity wasn't there. Like you could tell that the company just wanted to make money off geeks and gamers. Like they saw dollar signs in their eyes and like, all right, so we're going to try and do the same thing. And people would get their boxes and they could tell like the quality of what they were getting and the way it was curated just wasn't up to snuff compared to what we did. And so they would lose subscribers and they never were able to reach the heights that we did. But then we ended up becoming guilty of the exact same thing where, like I remember early on we had, I'll give you an example of like the TLC that was put into stuff. We had, this was back when there was still maybe like 10 people working for the company. We were still pretty young. And the co-founders had went to Florida to have a meeting with a well-known toy collectible company. And so there was myself and my buddy Mikey, who was doing a lot of like our marketing, stuff like that. And we all kind of did a little bit of curation as well. And another guy who was handling, because I handled a lot of some of our logistics stuff early on too, like as we were growing. So like helping to move us out of we had a small shop on Melrose in Hollywood here in Los Angeles that we grew out of very quickly because as we were growing, we basically got to the point where huge 40-foot semi trucks were showing up on Melrose to deliver product. They're like, we don't have a loading dock. We have these trucks taking over Melrose. The city is getting upset about it. The neighboring businesses are getting upset about it because we're having to offload trucks by hand because we have no dock, we don't have pallet jacks, we don't have forklifts or any of that stuff. So we ended up finding this warehouse that we grew into. And so then that was another one of my many hats, was like getting us into this warehouse and then making sure that we, purchasing forklifts and making sure that we had pallet racks to store product and things like that. Like another one of those random things that I did. So anyways, back to the original story, as we started to grow more, we had another person that came in and started to take over that because I have already had too many hats going on. But the three of us were, big time geeks and gamers ourselves. And our knowledge stretched across a lot of different genres of geek and gaming. So it worked out really well. We could bounce off each other for IPs that we didn't know or recognize, like, oh, we see people talking about this. Is it really as popular? Like, what's the story? Because the one person might not be familiar with it and vice versa. So anyways, getting back to the story, we were doing a crate where we were putting in a shot glass that for legal reasons, we couldn't call it a shot glass because we couldn't promote alcohol and something that was sold to kids and adults. So we called it a first person shooter glass. It was a shot glass with a reticle on it. We called it a first person shooter glass. And then there was also, in the early crates, we used to put candy and drinks and things like that. So we did energy candy and gums and mints, caffeinated gum, like the very geek focused types of candies and stuff like that. We had like the Super Mario energy drink that went in there. And so we had there was a product that shipped. It was like an energy breakfast shake kind of thing that shipped in like that paper Tetra Pak packaging. I don't know if you don't know what I'm talking about, but
I
like
think
when
I
you
do.
buy like when you get like milk or something from the store, but it's not in the plastic carton, it's in that like paper carton that's like the folded sides. That's Tetra Pak. Uh, so we had like this small energy drink that was going in there and this shot glass that were just going to be put into the box with a couple of other items. And the co-founders in Florida, and we're like starting to put together like, all right, because we would also have to go and figure out like we basically play Tetris every month, like figuring out like, all right, how can we fit these into a crate of this size and make sure that we fit as much in there as possible and fit it in a way that it moves the least and we fit the most in there, figure out that game of Tetris every month with what the products are going to be. And so we were doing that, and we, realized, so we learned early on that the USPS is very terrible with how they handle mail, like physically,
Sure.
like how much, like, because we would drop stuff out. We would, in the early days, as we started to get so big, we would go to, instead of dropping stuff off to the USPS, like in the front, like, no, we have like a special entrance for you in the back that's not available to the public. And you'll drive up your van or your truck or whatever. And it's handled separately with the whole thing. So we get to go in the back areas of these postal facilities and things like that to do this. And that was the eye opener for the first time, where we saw like how packages and things were actually handled when they knew the public wasn't looking. Like, okay, that's going to be handled like 5 ways along the way from shipping here to, say, someone in New York. How is that going to hold up when we put like a shot glass and a liquid beverage inside a crate? Like, how is that going to hold up over time? We realized like, oh, there's no way that we ship this and 90% of these things don't show up in someone's hands as broken glass, as a broken container, or a broken container that became broken and leaked liquid everywhere because of the broken glass. And so I Skyped up our co-founders while they were in Florida. I'm like, hey, by the way, so we were doing some testing in the office and realized this would be a problem. And like the CEO was like, nah, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, no, like I'm 110%. I am not dropping this. This is going to be a very big problem. We cannot ship these like this. We need to come up with a solution. And so we found like some extra tissue paper and some other stuff that we use to basically add a lot of shock absorption into the crate. But had we not done that, like that would have been an absolute disaster. Is things like that were, that's the kind of TLC that the like geek and gaming side of the people who put the crate together would put in. Like we would check for stuff like that and want to make sure that you don't have that bad experience. Because as someone who had previously done like community management for companies and things like that up to that point, or before that point, I know how bad like the first time something goes really bad can be on social. Like I don't want that experience. If we can do something to avoid that, even if it means us having to spend an extra 15 cents, 20 cents, whatever per crate to do it, let's do it, because it's going to pay back in spades that we put that kind of attention to detail into it, versus the alternative, which is absolutely, it only takes one or two people and then it's going to blow up and it's going to be really bad. And it's not worth the negative press and PR. It's not.
Wow. I mean,
And so,
there's a lot to this history. It's really interesting.
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I probably have more info on all the stuff that went down with Loot Crate from beginning to the semi end than anybody. And like, but like getting back to like, that was the kind of care we put in. And when we started going down, it was because that level of TLC just wasn't being put in anymore. And
Right.
so you get support tickets piling up, have to hire more support and deal with all of the blowout on the blowback on social, which was spread across Reddit and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and like making sure that that was all managed all over the place because everybody was upset. They start spreading the word and people start seeing like, oh yeah, like what is going on with those guys? Like, I don't know. I was thinking about buying it. Now I'm not sure if I want to buy it because like that's what I'm seeing from other people. So yeah, there's a lot of that built up, and like that ended up being, it just ended up being like a waterfall kind of thing that from late 2015, early 2016, we were like at our peak, just ended up killing us and keeping us going down. And we, to the point where the overhiring and things like that led to a major layoff where we lost like 75% of our staff, which at that
Jeez.
point, was probably 75 to 100 people, maybe more. And like that first time that happened, that was felt industry wide. That went, that was public quite a few places and wasn't a big deal, or was a big deal rather. And so it was combinations of stuff like that would happen. We try and bandage it by like, all right, well, let's try and shift the focus by making another crate for some other cool IP, and we'll just kind of ignore this thing. We'll put everybody's focus on like, ooh, here's something shiny. Pay attention to this and not this. And when you took that authenticity out of it, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's interesting. And by the way, as you were talking, I have 2015 pins
Nice.
from the crates for 2015. So I guess I had Loot Crate during its peak and when everything was like really, I think 2015 was a great year for you guys, right?
Yeah, that was, I mean,
Look, I got the Jurassic Park 2 thing. Do you remember this one?
I don't.
It's definitely you guys. It says Loot Crate on the back.
Oh, I believe it. Keep in mind that,
there was
all
a
of the
million
items
products, I know.
over years and years and years. There's stuff that I forget about that slips through the cracks. And
I didn't realize we were going to talk. I'm glad we talked most. We're almost at an hour, and we didn't dig into anything else. But that's totally fine because I think that the focus anyway was going to be Loot Crate. So what I want to kind of ask you is, so when things went downhill and after you left, like, what is the identity of Loot Crate today? Because honestly, as someone that was really into it when it was out, I almost forgot it was still even around. And what is it even doing these days? Can you give us any insights on like, I see.
Yeah,
I see they still have the site and crates.
Yeah.
But
so the fact that you were starting to forget that it was still even around should have been like the sign that like there was something going on, because prior to that there was this moment where you really couldn't go anywhere in the geek and gaming world without being exposed to Loot Crate in some way, shape, or form. So when it was like, what are they still around? What's going on with them? Like that was kind of in that same moment. So we had over a few years, we had various layoffs and things that always kill employee morale, obviously. And when you're replacing those people that were geeks gamers that might have gotten laid off, whatever else, with other people who are just filling spaces and don't necessarily have that same level of commitment to the product and are big time geeks gamers themselves, that ends up making it slip even more, etc. So in it was August of 2019. I, as someone who was kind of like one of the first employees and knew everybody and knew always what was going on behind the scenes, I was aware that a layoff was coming up. And my buddy was also kind of aware. We didn't know like to what extent what was going on was happening. We knew it was coming up and we knew some people were going to get hit. We didn't know specifics. So him and I go to lunch on a Friday afternoon. And then while we're out at lunch, it's like 2 p.m. Fridays we used to. So I also, for those that don't know, also created a live stream and like news show, because we did a lot of YouTube content and we did a lot of live stream content on Twitch and Mixer and YouTube. And so my job was leading the charge on all of our live content. So we had a weekly news show that was geek and gaming related called Looter News. And we had weekly Twitch streams where we would play really rad games and interact with our customers to keep like that kind of level of stuff going.
Sure.
So we had just wrapped shooting our Friday live news show, and me and our host Josh had gone out to grab some lunch. This was like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And all of a sudden, halfway through lunch, our phones start blowing up. And like, I knew a layoff was coming. I'm like, oh, that's got to be what it is. But then like phones really started blowing up like a little more than usual. Like, what is going on? And so we like, all right, well, we're going to wrap up our food. We're going to head back to the office, see what's going on. And I come around the corner as we get to the front door in the office, and I'm looking towards like where our HR department is. And like those boxes they give you for like when people are like leaving or get fired or whatever, those like bankers boxes, I saw a stack of those piled to the ceiling. I'm like, oh my God, this is whatever's going on. This is really, really, really bad. This is gonna be really, really like absolutely terrible. This is not a tiny layoff. Something big is going on. And so we found like by the time we had gotten there was a lot of people who had already been laid off. So him and I are like, all right, anytime you're in that situation, you like see people you've grown to kind of think of as family and your coworkers over a long period of time. You know, when you know like layoffs, it's one of the hardest things to watch or see. And so him and I are like, all right, we're gonna go into the studio and shut the door and just kind of hide out because this is rough. And the next thing I know, our host, I see him get a ping on his phone, and he's like, I have to go into the HR office. And we're like, shit, this is if they're getting rid of him. Him and I like had a lot of like, you know, everybody knew us and we had a lot of history with the company. And I knew right then and there, like if they're getting rid of him, everything is being gotten rid of right now. Something really bad is happening. And like I probably have maybe 15 minutes left at this job is what I took away at that moment. So he goes in there, and then sure enough, like 15 minutes later, HR guy is like, he gave me the look, and he just knew. He's like, I know that you know what's going on here, and I hate doing this because him and I went back, you know, a long ways. And so what we ended up finding out was like, yeah, bulk of the employees were all let go. But then it got more interesting because as I shouldn't say this, I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway.
Okay.
So as we were getting let go, so I was getting let go as someone who like, you know, was usually clued in or, you know, was always clued into a lot more going on than what most employees were. You know, our HR guy told me, hey, so obviously we're letting everybody go. You know, we're going to cut you a check that, you know, covers everything and any unused vacation time, etc. And he kind of stopped me for a second. He goes, you didn't hear this from me? I'm not officially saying this to you. This is just you and me, like not HR and employee, whatever. It's just you and me that, you know each other, known each other for years. The check that I cut for you today, I would go immediately out the door and immediately cash it as fast as you can.
Damn.
Like, oh God.
Jesus Christ.
Like,
that's scary, man.
And he's like, yeah, I would go and cash that as fast as you can, because if you wait, I don't know that check's actually going to be cashable and not bounce if you don't do this tonight the second you walk out the door.
Sure. Jesus.
I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? So I do that, and sure enough, we find out over the weekend, company files for bankruptcy.
Jesus, it happened that fast.
Wow,
It was just like
that
really
fast.
fast. Wow. Do you think?
So like, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask. Do you think that if you guys would have stuck to one subscription box and not had like branched off to all these other options, that maybe it would have had more control? Like if you guys would have just stuck to the one subscription? No.
No, I would love to go into detail on why that is, but the stuff that I don't want to like
no
over certain people or anything. But yeah, there for that reason, those reasons that I won't go into were going to exist regardless.
Right.
Whether we had one SKU or 5 crates or whatever we were doing, that was it. That was just inevitable, and it was something that like, you know, I was like an original employee, but I didn't have physical stake in the company the way the 2 co-founders did. So as much as I didn't like certain things, my hands were tied. I could speak up about it and probably get listened to more than most employees would. But at the end of the day, I couldn't do anything. And so as much as I did speak up about stuff like that, like there was stuff that like I knew there were changes being made that I didn't agree with, and I thought were going to be the end of us. Sooner or later, and obviously I was absolutely right, and that's how that worked out, unfortunately.
Wow. Well, I do want to say that Genzo mentioned he really appreciates all the backstory, and I think it is fascinating because it's a part of it. Kind of Loot Crate will sit in a part of like nerdum history as a
Oh,
really
100,
it
110%.
it had its place in the sun, I guess you could say, for its shorter period of time. And it's really interesting to hear like a lot of your backstory. And I know you can't go too much into detail, but it's been really fascinating to have you describe it.
Yeah,
And oh, go ahead.
you say, like I said, it was such a huge part of pop culture. Actually, to tail off that last story real quick. So, bankruptcy happened, and what we didn't know was also happening was that part of that happening was that someone was going to buy the company, and because all of that was going to happen, it basically set it up so they could, basically the agreement, to my knowledge, was that they wouldn't purchase the company unless X, Y, and Z happened, which basically made the company something that could be purchased for pennies on the dollar, for this person to like come in and basically buy the company for themselves. Which, when a company is failing, typically you would think like, why would you want to purchase a failing company? That doesn't make sense. The thing there is we had licenses for so many different IPs in gaming and pop culture. Like those licenses are worth their weight in gold. Like that was one of the biggest things you could acquire by acquiring the company, even if it's not successful. So yeah, the bankruptcy happened, and like literally 3 days later, on a Tuesday, after 4 days later after this happened, company was bought up out of bankruptcy, and all kinds of stuff happened. And then that new company basically like restarted Loot Crate, but doing everything their way and with their stuff. And uh how that ends up working out in the long run, well, I guess it's just a wait and see. It's all say on that. But what I was going to say was that there's a lot of great things that came out of that whole thing and that era that oh man, I remember that video.
Yeah, I'm finding all
there's
this cool stuff from Loot Crate on the interwebs.
Yeah, our production team, we had a lot of fun with a lot of the videos that we did, and that was one of the things that our fan base really loved too. Was that we used to do these monthly theme videos, which were really well shot, and sometimes with people very well known in the geek and gaming community that people really loved. So yeah, we had fun with that stuff. But we did, because of how big we got to do so many amazing things that were just absolutely insane. So I'm looking over into my dining room right now, and I have comics up on the wall that are in protective cases and mounted on the wall. One of them is Rocket Raccoon issue #1, and another one is the Star Wars #1 when they brought it back. And the reason I have those and they're encased on the wall is a show off piece that I'm very proud of, because those were a Rocket Raccoon. I think was the first one we did. We put Rocket Raccoon #1 in a Loot Crate, and
that's awesome.
That was the first time I think we put a comic in a crate, and it was #1 of that new series. And because we were putting it in a crate, and we were shipping out to I think 300 something thousand people worldwide at the time, because we put Rocket Raccoon in the crate, it became the #1 selling comic that month because of the volume of our customers.
Wow. That's pretty cool, man.
That happened anytime we put something in a crate. So I have that Rocket Raccoon framed up on my wall, and I have that Star Wars one. And because we were doing such volume, we got variant covers. So there are Loot Crate. They are both Loot Crate variant covers of those comics. So Rocket is he's standing on the cover with Thanos behind him, and Rocket is standing and holding Loot Crates that he's delivering. And the Star Wars one, I think, is Han with some Loot Crates on the cover. And the fact that there's the one right there. So like if they scroll down, I don't know if they do in this video, like Rocket's, he's holding a Loot Crate in his hand. Like we had our own variant cover.
That's pretty
nuts. As someone who was a comic nerd as a kid, that was the coolest thing to me.
That is pretty neat, man.
I love comics, and the fact that we did that, and we had our own variant cover, and it was the #1 seller because we were putting it in a crate, was one of my favorite things that ever happened, and that I'm so proud of being a part of. Despite things not ending the way I like, whatever else, that'll always be. There are moments like that I'm so proud of and happy of, that I will, that thing will always stay on my wall and come with me wherever I go. Same thing with the Star Wars comic, stuff like that. There were one of my favorite moments was that, so when I was a kid, sixth grade, we all got assigned reports to do this big report on someone famous in the art world. So like kids were doing Michelangelo and Da Vinci, etc. And I got Stan Lee. So sixth grade me does this huge report on Stan Lee and gets to nerd out about this and like tie it in with art. And like I was just such a fan, and so because of this, one of the things I got to do was meet Stan Lee multiple times. One of the times was like hanging out in his office and like just getting to see like how he works.
Oh man,
during
that's
the day.
really cool.
And this was not too many years back. This was, I think 5 or 6 years ago. It was a few years before he died. And that was like, that is an experience that happened because of this that I will always love and cherish, because he was like such a hero, and I loved and appreciated him so much. So that, being able to like meet him, see how he works, and just see it, like, they say don't meet your heroes, and 90% of the time they're usually right. But in that scenario, it was the best thing ever. And I can't say enough about how crazy, because of Loot Crate and what we did, like that was what helped that experience happen for me. And like to the point where like when he passed, I was invited to his celebration of life that they did in Hollywood. And so it was, like
That's
famous
really
actors all like telling these great Stan stories. And like I'm just like sitting there in the same room with all these amazing people in the geek industry, from Marvel and the films and the comics and all these different celebrities that had these great things to say about Stan. And like being able after his passing to have that experience was such an amazing thing for me that I will always cherish and love. That was such a big deal for me.
That's kind of a great way to kind of close out. I could probably talk with you, Chris, for another like 2 hours on this.
I apologize. I didn't mean to like go so crazy long and stuff, because I think before we talked, you thought you had mentioned like, oh, like we're going for like hour and a half or something, and like, oh, like, all right, so I'll get into details. But
no. Well, what happens is like, in this case, I didn't realize we would be going so far in, but I realized that we needed this time to go in this far. So I'm actually really happy with all the backstory you gave us, and I think I'm really glad we talked about this, because we did an episode basically about Loot Crate, the importance of it's like kind of like history in the nerdum world. So, dude, I am really happy, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. And I think we're going to have you on again so we could talk more just about some general other topics. But before we go, just to close things out, is there anything you want to mention to anyone, where to find you, best places to look for anything new that you're doing or what you're doing in the future? I don't know, anything to share for the audience before we head out?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I've kind of got on pause at the moment. So I used to, after Loot Crate, I got back into Twitch streaming. I was doing that very regularly. And then I put that on pause March of 2020, because I'm like, all right, I've been streaming heavily. I'm like, all right, I need to like schedule a couple days off. And I scheduled those 2 days off. And that's right when the pandemic just started blowing up. And so much started going on that like I just didn't get back to it, and I ended up feeling guilty about not getting back to it sooner. And so I've kind of just been on hiatus since. At some point I will definitely get back to doing that.
Cool.
But yeah, like those who don't know me, I do a lot, I do a lot of live production. So like a couple weeks ago I was like doing something with Ice Cube in Vegas.
I saw
that kind of fun stuff that I do.
I'm gonna put all your handles,
game companies, but
oh wait,
Jen's it's pretty much Rock and Roll Geek on all the things. The bot in the chat's got it. Jenso's a rock star and kicked ass, and there it all is in the chat.
Yep.
Thank you, Jenso. You were awesome.
Yeah, and Chris, dude, I first of all, thank you so much for all the support you do for me. I know you've watched this podcast before. I know you've supported Retro Gaming Talks every night. You have a love of nerdom like me. You have a love of gaming like me. So I feel like we have a lot in common. And I always want you to know that I appreciate your support. and it's really great to
Thank
have
you.
you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's great to have you on the show. I'm gonna VOD this. I'm gonna spread it out. So as soon as the show's over, we're gonna link this out as a full episode so that everyone on VOD, which I'm waving to right now, can enjoy. I do want to thank you again for coming on. I want to thank everyone that watched live and the VOD.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, man. I thought it was freaking awesome, and this is a topic I didn't think we would be going into, but because I met
And
you,
the crazy thing is, like, before we got started, I actually made notes for myself that are off to the side. There's 1.5 million more stories that I hadn't even scratched the surface of, not just with Loot Crate stuff, but also like geek stuff, gaming stuff, etc. That, like, yeah, if we ever want to get back into any
I
of
would
that,
love
I've
to
got
have you on as a guest.
1.5 million more hours of content. I can talk about stuff all day. Obviously, you and I both nerd out like crazy on all this stuff. So
yeah, and Retro Game Brew says great episode. Thank you so much. I know Genzo, you said that you really enjoyed walking around this history, and again, I will be VODing this. We're gonna spread this out. There'll be a replay of the episode on Tuesday on Twitch. Chris, I'm probably going to see you around. Thank you again. We're going to raid someone that I haven't seen live in a long time. Her name is Rachel. And because she's live, we're going to raid her. And let's give her some love, everyone. Here we go. And until next week, we'll see you then. We have a few things coming up. I have a few retro gaming TikTokers that are big TikTokers that have a big collection in retro gaming. So they're going to be coming on in the next couple of weeks. We have a few other guests coming on. Future shows, they're always here. We're here every Saturday morning. Thank you again, Chris, for coming to the cafe, by the way. It's great to have you. Let's raid Rachel, and we'll see everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Stay cool, wash your hands, and be kind. I'm Andy. Peace. And thanks, Chris. All right, we're going to raid here in 5, 4, 3, 2,
2, 1.
Enjoy. Sweet.